Welcome into this edition of the J-Man Show. Glad to be here with you today. First and foremost, I'd like to apologize for not posting last week. I know I'm only apologizing to like 3 people, but I do apologize. It's difficult when you're a one-man show. I mean, I am making excuses, and yes, you can pull out your little violins. It's hard when you're a one-man show, because I really do enjoy doing these podcasts. It's just, during the week, it's difficult when there are other things on the mind. So, hey, if anyone's interested in collabing, as the kids say, for doing this podcast, hey, I am by all means interested in having other people to collab with, other people to do some different things with as well. But for the time being, yes, we alternate between Ball Diamond and J-Man Show, and so I have to do a better job at that. I have changed when these are going to be posted and recorded and stuff like that, so that it's all on a easier schedule, and it's for the 3 people that are listening. So I thank the 3 people that are listening, and I apologize to you as well. Coming up, we will talk about the Detroit Pistons. They hold the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. Give you kind of my top 5 players in this draft, and then why the Pistons should select X player. And then we will also talk about the Detroit Tigers. Major League Baseball draft was held on Sunday for the first time. It was held after the Futures game. And we'll talk about their selection at number 3. And we'll also talk about some of the other picks that they made throughout the rest of the Major League Baseball draft. Before we do that, I'd like to remind you that you can stay connected to the show through our social media pages. Facebook, The J-Man Show, both Instagram and Twitter at _The J-Man Show. Alright, let's lead off with the Detroit Tigers, because it's baseball and it's a pun of leading off. See? Ha ha ha. Funny. So the Tigers, they held the number 3 overall pick in the 2021 Major League Baseball draft. Last year, they held the number 1 overall pick, where they selected Spencer Torkelson. This year, they had the number 3 pick. It was held after the Futures game, and it was funny because they did AL-NL for the Futures game, and the Futures, I think for the American League, only had 5 hits, and Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, who were the representatives for the Tigers, had 3 of those hits. So that was really nice to see them shine at the Futures game, and then being able to have the draft right after. So there was a shark that went number 1, and that was Henry Davis. I didn't suspect that to happen. You'll get my full thoughts on the draft, on the Major League Baseball draft, in our next Ball Diamond podcast episode. But Henry Davis went number 1, and it was shocking, because I thought Marcelo Mayer was going to go number 1. I mentioned last week on Ball Diamond that I thought Marcelo Mayer was going to go number 1. He was my best player on the board. And I was really shocked when I heard that Henry Davis went number 1, and when I saw Henry Davis go number 1. Then Jack Leiter went number 2, and I was shocked that the Rangers actually had the balls to take Jack Leiter number 2. Because I thought they were going to pick Jackson Jobe. I thought they were going to go more of a riskier pick, because it's a huge risk to take a high school pitcher. But I thought that they were going to do it because of the makeup of who Jackson Jobe is, and the fact that the Rangers rebuild really is quite early in its totality. To be honest, it's in its very early stages. But they took Jack Leiter, and I give them full credit for doing that. So the Tigers were sitting there at number 3, and again, Marcelo Mayer was the number 1 overall pick, number 1 overall prospect, I should say, not just by my terms, by actual baseball scouts as well. MLB Network did a whole pre-show thing where they actually ranked the top 50 prospects in this year's draft, and it aired, I think, a week before the draft, and it was actually very interesting to watch. I got a lot of preliminary stuff, a lot of preliminary research on a lot of these guys watching that show, and then I did my own research and did my own soul searching, as you should say, on these guys, and I kind of then, again, I made my own mock draft on Ball Diamond, and then I posted the mock draft for 5 teams, the first 5 teams, on the Ball Diamond podcast Instagram page. And then I also did my top 5 players, where I had Marcelo Mayer going number 1, or being my number 1 guy. In doing my research with Marcelo Mayer, I heard constantly the Tigers were very interested in Marcelo Mayer. And I actually, throughout the process of doing research, I actually got excited about Marcelo Mayer. I was starting to do comps. I'm thinking this guy could be like Corey Seager, but maybe more athletic. I'm thinking like I was getting excited for the guy. And I didn't think that he'd even be there. He falls to the Tigers because of Henry Davis going number 1 and Jack Leiter going number 2, and I'm thinking, all right, Marcelo Mayer, he's going to be taken number 1, or he's going to be taken here with the Tigers. It's no way he's going to get to Boston at 4. The Tigers decided to go a different route and take Jackson Jobe with the 3rd overall pick. Again, you would think that I'd be excited because I had him going number 2 to the Rangers. But I just wasn't. I wanted Marcelo Mayer because the Tigers have an organizational need in their infield. If you're a Tigers fan, name me one guy up the middle that they have in their system that's exciting. Because Spencer Torkelson is a first baseman / third baseman. He's on the corner. Riley Green is an outfielder, center fielder, could end up being more of a right fielder. Who else? Isaac Paredes? Not really a shortstop. He's more of a third baseman, second baseman, not really first baseman. He's more of a second baseman, third baseman. Willie Castro hasn't done much this year. Wenzel Perez hasn't done anything since 2018. So start Brock Death Rage? No, I don't even think he's with the organization anymore. Cody Clemens? Nope, he ain't going to cut it at second base or at shortstop. I could keep going, but there is no middle infield depth in this farm system. And Marcelo Mayer being the top guy on the list, the Pirates got cheap, and that's why they went with Henry Davis. Let's be quite honest. They went cheap. They didn't have a lot of money in the draft pool. They went cheap with the number 1 overall pick. Because they should have taken Marcelo Mayer with the number 1 pick, because he was the best player on the board. Texas, they needed pitching. They took Jack Leiter. You don't necessarily need pitching. Yes, it's great to have pitching. You don't necessarily need pitching because you got depth in your organization with pitching. You need middle infield depth. You didn't even go after it. The player that you apparently coveted, you didn't go after. You went with Jackson Jobe. And I get it. Doing research on Jobe, that's why I had him going number 2 overall. That's why he was in my top 5. He's a polished high school right-handed pitcher. I mean, his ceiling is a lot higher than what Jack Leiter's is. And Jack Leiter is very, very good. But this guy has command of all 4 of his pitches. He's got 4 really good pitches right now. The problem with high school pitchers is you never know how that arm is going to develop. And people are going to sit there and go, but Marcelo Mayer, he's a high school shortstop. Okay, yes, he's a high school shortstop. He's a high school player. You don't ever know how high school players are going to transition. The thing is, with high school batters, when they come into your organization, they get reps because you need them to get reps. So they're playing on an everyday basis. Whereas with pitchers, you're kind of massaging them in. You're babying them in because you don't know how their arm is going to end up developing. You have no idea. And I hope that Jackson Jobe turns out. I really do. But man, did Al Avila open up a can of worms. It was like the final episode of Loki and how Sylvie kind of opened up the entire multiverse. That's kind of what Al Avila did by drafting Jackson Jobe. He opened himself up to a huge amount of criticism. He opened up the organization as to when is this rebuild actually going to happen. Because you've got Mize, you've got Scooble, you've got Manning with the big league club now. You now also have Isaac Paredes. You also got, Willie Castro's been up with the team all year. Torkelson and Green, and even Dingler for that matter, are knocking on the door. I mean, Dingler has gone into a huge slump, but Green and Torkelson are knocking on the door and will be with this team next year, at the very latest. So your window is starting now, but you go with your number 3 overall pick, you pick a high school righty who's going to take 4 to 5 years before we actually get to see him in the major leagues. I mean, again, their head of scouting is going to tell you that he could be fast-tracked to the majors, but you don't know how that arm is going to develop. You just don't. The last high school right-handed pitcher that was picked in the top 5 that is still pitching in the big leagues today is Jameson Taillon. And his career hasn't been all that great because it's been injury-riddled. The other guys I never even heard of. I can't even remember their names off the top of my head, which is pretty sad. Again, Tigers have to get him signed still. That's priority number 1, because if they don't even get him signed, it's already an embarrassment that they wasted that pick on a guy that they didn't even sign. So they gotta get him signed. But man, Marcelo Mayer being on the board, my number 1 player, Jonathan Mayo's number 1 player, Jim Callis's number 1 player, tons of scouts' number 1 player. He's still on the board, and you went with a high school righty, high school pitcher. Don't love it. I hope for Jackson Jobe that he turns out to be the ace of this rotation, that he ends up being this oh-so-great pitcher. Because I really hope, whether it's for the Tigers or whether it's for somebody else. But man alive, was I very disappointed with that pick. Now, I did like Ty Madden in the compensatory round. I think that he has a chance of being a very good back end of a rotation starter. I think he could be a 3-4 guy. I know a lot of people think that he's going to be more of a bullpen guy. I think that's where he's going to start off. I think that's how he's going to get into the big leagues. But I think he's got 3 legit pitches. He's got a good slider. He's got a good fastball. Those are his 2 bread and butter pitches. And that's why people think he's going to be a reliever. But I think that the changeup can be a good pitch for him. I think he just has to use it a little bit more. I think he has to develop it a little bit more. Other reason why people don't think he's going to be a starter is because his slider and his fastball aren't super high in the spin rate. But I don't care. I look at your stuff. He's a power pitcher. He's got good command of his slider. He's got good command of his fastball. And he pitched very well for Texas this year. He pitched very well against Bednar, the pitcher who ended up going in the top 15 or top 20 in this year's draft from Mississippi State, who ended up getting to the College World Series, ended up pitching against Kumar Rocker and pitched very well against Kumar Rocker. He held his own. And so I like the pick of Ty Madden. I also like Isaac Pacheco, the eventual shortstop that they picked, I believe, in the 2nd round. Left-handed power bat. He's not going to stay at shortstop. He's 6'4", 225. But from everything that I did my research on, he was a consensus top 50 guy. He is a guy that could end up being like a poor man's Joey Gallo, where he's got a lot of pop in that bat. He's going to probably move positions. He may not even stick at third base. He may be sneakily athletic to play the outfield. Not center field, but to play a corner outfield spot and be a middle of the lineup type hitter. So I like that. And then they kind of went pitcher heavy in this draft. I don't really know why, but they went pitcher heavy. And you look at some of these guys that they picked. I like the pitcher they picked out of Alabama. I even like the pitcher that they picked out of Notre Dame. He's a former offensive lineman. He's got a really good fastball. He's going to end up being in the bullpen 100%. But I like that pick. But again, Jackson Jobe, number 3, was not my favorite. When you had Marcelo Mayer, the consensus number 1 guy on the board, I would have even been okay with Jordan Lawler. And if you wanted to go pitcher, I probably would have went Kumar Rocker, just based on the fact that I think that your timeline is starting now, not later. Like, you've got Mize, Skubal, Manning up now. Green and Torkelson are knocking on the door. If you wanted to go pitcher, Kumar Rocker would have been the guy, even though I kind of think the Tommy John surgery is in the very near future for him, just based off the fact that his velocity was down and his command was just erratic this year. So again, didn't love the Jackson Jobe pick. I'm hoping for Jobe himself that he turns out to be very, very good. Again, we won't see him for a very long time. I hope he develops. I hope Tigers can develop him. I hope Chris Fetter and the rest of the pitching staff and the rest of the pitching coaches in the minor leagues can develop this kid And then he ends up being the top of a line starter. He ends up hitting in the potential that he has because he's got all the talent. It's just how is that arm going to develop? Coming up after the break, we will get into the Detroit Pistons. They hold the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. Who should they pick? And I'll give you my top 5 in the NBA draft this year. Stay tuned. Hey everyone, it's the J-Man here to talk about the new show, Ball Diamond Podcast, a part of the new podcast series from J-Man Sports. We all know baseball's losing fans quite rapidly, but we also know that there are still loyal fans of America's pastime. And if you are like me and love rumors, trades, prospects, pace of play, and talking about your favorite team, and ultimately just talking about the game of baseball, then Ball Diamond Podcast is for you. You can follow along with Ball Diamond Podcast via your social media pages, Facebook Ball Diamond Podcast, both Instagram and Twitter at Ball Diamond Pod. Ball Diamond Podcast is exclusively streaming on the new J-Man Sports YouTube channel. Alrighty, welcome back. So the Detroit Pistons, they won something. They didn't win a game. They didn't win a playoff series. They didn't win the NBA championship. They won the NBA draft lottery. I mean, it was exciting when that was announced. Like, that was probably the most exciting moment in Detroit sports history within probably the last 5 years. Because it's been just dreadful to be a Detroit sports fan the last 5 to 7 years. Everybody's rebuilding. The Lions are a joke. The Red Wings have been seemingly rebuilding since their 25-year playoff streak ended. And the Tigers, I mean, they are a complete embarrassment in baseball. Let's just be honest. They've had the worst time in their history over the last 5 years, 5 to 7 years. And the Pistons, I mean, they've had just moderate success. They've been this okay team where they haven't been super bad to be in the lottery consistently, but they haven't really been that good to be anywhere but 7th or 8th in the Eastern Conference. And when they have been in the lottery, it's been, 7, 8, 9 in the lottery. They haven't been super high. But they actually, they had the best odds at getting the number 1 pick. They were tied with Houston, having the best odds at getting the number 1 overall pick. It came down to Detroit and Houston, and when Detroit's name was called, it was like they won the NBA championship. I think I was emotional because it was so exciting. Now, why was it exciting? Because I think there's a lot of talent in this draft. I really do, and specifically at the top of this draft. There's not a consensus number 1 guy, but there's a lot of talent. And it starts at the top with Cade Cunningham. Okay, he's 6'8", small forward / point guard. He's got all the skills that you want. Is he athletic? He's not the most athletic guy. That's probably his drawback because he tends to take a lot of contested shots because he's, again, not uberly athletic. But you look at these taller point guards. You're looking at LaMelo Ball. You're looking at Luka Doncic. Okay, this guy is tremendous with the basketball in his hands. He can score at all 3 levels. He can defend, and he can defend multiple positions. That's why he's my number 1 player on my board. But you can make a case for any of the other remaining players that I've got. So my number 2 player, Jalen Green. Okay, this guy is electric. He played in the G League last year. Just go watch him play. This guy is athletic. This guy can score from anywhere on the court. This guy's got all the confidence. He compared himself to Kobe Bryant, for gosh sakes. I mean, confidence level, very, very high. I would love to have his confidence level. My issue with Jalen Green is just he's not a great defender. He's got the size to be a good defender, but he's not a great defender, and he cannot create for other people. He can create his own shot, but man, he's not a playmaker. Maybe he would fit with Killian Hayes. I don't know. My number 3 player is Jalen Suggs. Now, this might shock a lot of people that I don't have Evan Mobley as my number 3 player, but I love Jalen Suggs. I watched him throughout the tournament play for Gonzaga. I watched him during the season play for Gonzaga, and I think really in a lot of other years, I think that he would be the number 1 pick. He's 6'4". This guy can, again, score from any 3 levels. He's athletic, and he can defend. So why wouldn't I have him ahead of Jalen Green? basketball maturity. Basketball wasn't his first sport, wasn't his only sport in high school. He didn't really commit to playing until he got recruited by Gonzaga, and he ultimately made that decision not to play quarterback in college football. He decided to play basketball. So I just think that his maturity in terms of basketball, his playmaking isn't great for being a point guard. Again, he is 6'4". That is good size, not great size anymore in the NBA. Today's NBA, they're leaning towards more taller, bigger point guards. And again, I think that his shot selection isn't always the greatest. My number 4 player in this draft is Evan Mobley, because I think that there is a huge amount of potential there. Now, this is like Jackson Jobe that I just spoke about. Okay? Because with Jackson Jobe, there's a huge potential with him, just like with Evan Mobley. The problem is he's not a finished product right now, by any means. He's not a finished product. He could develop into a stretch 5 who can defend multiple positions because he's quick. He's got good lateral quickness. He can. He's got a good vertical. The problem is he could also develop into a not really a stretch 4 or 5, but he's a guy that really can't defend because of his lack of body weight, his lack of size. And he won't be able to score down low, won't be really able to defend down low either. So he'd just kind of be like a rotational, kind of like Thon Maker was for the Pistons, where he really didn't make any sort of impact on a game. But the potential is there. He is very good He was very good defensively in college. He's very athletic for being a center. You kind of look at him and yeah, you see a little bit, at least to me, you see a little bit of like kind of like Jaren Jackson mixed a little bit with DeAndre Ayton. 2 very, very good young post players in this league. And my number 5 guy, Scotty Barnes from Florida State. This guy is kind of like Cade Cunningham, just I don't think as polished as Cade Cunningham. He is 6'9". He played point guard for Florida State. He also filled in many different positions for Florida State because Florida State always seems to recruit super tall, super athletic, multi-positional players. He only made 7 starts in 24 games at Florida State, but he led the team in assists. And he had a higher assist rate than Cade Cunningham and a guy like Jalen Suggs, who are more natural point guards. The issue with him, it comes with his scoring. He's not as natural of a scorer as what Suggs or Green or Mobley or Cade Cunningham are. His areas are more playmaking and defense. That's where he comes in. He is athletic. He is lanky. He can guard multiple positions and can guard multiple positions well. And he can create plays for other people. So that's why he's kind of my number 5 guy. So there's been a lot of rumors swirling around because the Pistons have the number 1 overall pick. And whether they're going to trade the pick, all this stuff. And to me, I don't believe any of it. Because as soon as the Pistons were announced that they had the number 1 pick, you go on social media and you're already hearing insiders say, well, the Pistons are exploring trades for the number 1 pick. Yeah, because you know why? They'd be stupid not to listen. Because you know what? If a team is going to offer you a king's ransom for the number 1 pick, you got to take it. In all honesty, I don't trade the number 1 pick because you could kind of tell going through my top 5, there is one guy to me that stands out. That's Cade Cunningham. Again, is Cade Cunningham perfect? Is Cade Cunningham a LeBron James? No, he's not. Is he a Michael Jordan? No, he's not. Michael Jordan didn't even go number 1 overall. But he's not that superstar Hakeem Olajuwon, LeBron James, number 1 overall pick that you just knew it when you saw it. Not Kevin Durant, not any of those guys. But what Cade Cunningham does is what the rest of the NBA is doing. He is a long, multi-positional player in today's game. No, he's not the most athletic guy, but he can score from anywhere. He is ball dominant, and he can defend multiple positions, and he's a good defender. Like this isn't a guy who is just long and can't defend like Jalen Green. This guy can defend right now, and to me, Cade Cunningham is ultimately the safest pick because, yes, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, and Evan Mobley, and even Scotty Barnes, they all have a higher ceiling. Okay? And maybe Cade Cunningham's ceiling is just the roof. Right? Just like what Michael Jordan said, right? Maybe Cade Cunningham's ceiling is only the roof. But guess what? I think Cade Cunningham can come into this league as a rookie, average 15 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds a game, and be able to defend multiple positions. That's what I think he can come in next year and do for this Pistons team. And then slowly get better. Again, I see Luka Doncic with this guy. I just do. I mean, people are comparing him to Grant Hill, which I don't understand because I don't think he's anything like Grant Hill. Because, yeah, Grant Hill could definitely make from the small forward position, definitely had the size, but he was more athletic. He was more of a high flyer than what Cade Cunningham is. Cade Cunningham can score at all 3 levels. Yes, what he has to get better at is he can't make a living taking contested shots. I mean, Luka Doncic does. He lives and dies by it, and he's very successful at it. To me, you can't necessarily do that in the NBA game. So he's going to have to be a little bit more creative in his scoring. But the thing is, like I said, he can defend right now. I think he is the clear-cut number 1 player in this draft, as I just went through my top 5 players. Again, do I like a guy like Scotty Barnes? Yeah, I like Scotty Barnes. I think that he could end up being kind of like a poor man's version of Cade Cunningham. Yeah, I really like Jalen Suggs. I'm higher on Jalen Suggs than I think really a lot of people, because a lot of people don't like him because he went to Gonzaga. A lot of people don't like him because they didn't get to watch him. A lot of people don't like him because, again, he played football and basketball in high school, and he almost chose football and all that stuff. But I think that Jalen Suggs can end up being a really good playmaker. I think that he can be more aggressive on the offensive side. I think that he can be a good defender, and I think that he can score at all different positions. Yeah, I love Jalen Suggs. I really do. But I think that Cade Cunningham not only is the safest player, but I also think that he is the best player at this point in time right now. Yeah, guess what? Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley, they may all be better in the long run. They may end up being the better players in the long run. But they could also end up not being those guys. I just think that Cade Cunningham, his ceiling may not be as high, but his floor isn't as low. So, again, to me, you fade for Cade. You're fading for Cade all year. You make the pick for Cade Cunningham. And you know what? Dwayne Casey came out and asked what he's looking for in these prospects, and he said that he was looking for guys that make their bed in the morning. Well, if I'm Cade Cunningham and I hear that, I'm making my bed every damn morning. Because I think this is a guy that can kind of just do a little bit of everything. Now, does he fit with Killian Hayes? No. In a perfect world, I wouldn't have drafted Killian Hayes last year because he was an unathletic, not great scoring point guard. Cade Cunningham isn't super athletic, but he can score. He can shoot the ball. Killian Hayes didn't shoot the ball in France, really was not that efficient of a scorer in France. He was a playmaker, but he was unathletic. He was kind of that, again, kind of multi-positional, being a 6'5 guard, but he wasn't a guy that was guarding a lot of guards. He was guarding a lot more small forwards because of his lack of athleticism. So I wouldn't even draft Killian Hayes. But to me, I think that they can coexist. I think that for Killian Hayes' development, I think that he could A, come off the bench, or B, I think that both these guys could learn to play off ball. And to have 2 playmakers, I think that could end up being very good. Now, look, could you end up taking Jalen Green? Does Jalen Green fit with Killian Hayes? Absolutely 100%. Because he's a scorer, not much of a playmaker, can score from anywhere on the field, anywhere on the court. Yeah, and he's terrific. He's athletic. He can mold maybe into a defensive player because he's got the 6'5 frame. Just needs to maybe fill out a little bit more. But to me, again, I think it's Cade Cunningham. I don't think you trade the pick unless you can get a king's ransom. You fade for Cade. You draft Cade Cunningham. You leave the other higher risk guys to all these other teams. Because guess what? Most likely, only one of those players is going to turn out, if any of them do. I like those players. Doesn't mean that they're going to turn out to be superstars in this league. I think that Cade Cunningham could just walk in, be the rookie of the year this year, and you end up building around Cade Cunningham. And you've already got Bay. You've already got Isaiah Stewart. I know people don't love Isaiah Stewart as their center because he's not this flashy guy. Evan Mobley is this flashy, high potential guy. Right? He's Jackson Jobe. And a lot of people weren't happy when the Pistons, or when the Tigers, took Jackson Jobe. I think a lot of Pistons fans wouldn't be happy if the Pistons took Evan Mobley. Because, yeah, you know what? For all that flash and all that potential that he has, he may never turn out. Whereas I firmly believe that Cade Cunningham is going to not only just turn out to be a very good player, I think he's going to end up turning out to be a star. He's a player you build around him, Sadiq Bey, and Isaiah Stewart. Because I think Isaiah Stewart is a mixture of Ben Wallace and Andre Drummond. He's